Welcome back. It's time for the Roundtable and another roller coaster week this week in the markets. From investor confidence to Ebola, is the biggest problem right now overreaction? Well, with opinions strong on both sides, who better to bring in than our regular contributors, Peter Marisi and Jonathan Aberman. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Peter Marisi, you heard Ann McCabe-Triana talking earlier about market volatility. Is there a good explanation to why all of this volatility, or as she said, is it just built into all the different factors the market brings to bear right now?
Well, I think there's been a lot of naysayers in the principal financial press, particularly the Wall Street Journal, which on a daily basis, the drumbeat, the market's overvalued. I agree, the market's not overvalued. My feeling is you have to compare it to Treasury securities and other alternatives, and in that light, stocks look like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would also say, if you're asking a question about volatility, the reality is that right now the markets, a lot of the trading that goes on is computer-driven trading and hedge fund-driven trading, which frankly rewards volatility. You trade into trends. I used to be a trader. So a lot of the volatility is just who's in the markets on a daily basis.
Very good point. Peter, some of the things that the market has been looking at are the very things you talk about on a regular basis, where we are on jobs, where the Chinese economy is headed. Give us your assessment on some of those big issues.
Well, there's not a lot that's really new. Europe's going into a recession. What else is new? I mean, Southern Europe's been in a recession now for 5 to 7 years, depending on how you count it. And the rest of Europe's had 2 of them already since the financial crisis. China slowing down, gee whiz, they're going from 7.7 to 7.4% growth. I mean, that's hardly a rounding error in the United States. Overall, my feeling is that conditions have not changed, and the market, you know, I wrote an article 2 weeks ago, don't panic, when the market was crashing, and since then the market has rebounded.
What do you think are the biggest issues people should be looking at right now, Jonathan?
Look, I think that what Peter's described is exactly right, that the world right now is pretty much status quo. Take away the volatility and the panic about Ebola and so forth, which we'll talk about. I think the biggest issue in the United States economy is we have a 25-year cycle of exporting our jobs. And until Congress and a president, whoever it is, decide to do something about that issue.
Don't set Peter up for that softball. Peter, overall, you have been saying that, and you say right now, don't get so excited about the unemployment rate. You still see problems in the job market.
Oh, absolutely. 1 out of 6 adult men between 25 and 54, too old for college, too young to retire, are unemployed. Many of them aren't even looking. America's new virtual park bench is ESPN, where they watch old NFL reruns instead of going out and doing something productive.
There's 2 categories you noted. We're not producing enough low-wage jobs for workers, and you also say we're not producing enough high-wage jobs for men. Explain that.
Well, we're certainly not producing a lot of the kinds of jobs that men used to do. The construction industry hasn't fully recovered because of changes in demographics, the housing market and so forth. And manufacturing has been jettisoned to China because we have simply not done what we need to do.
You blame President Obama.
Well, and before that, President Bush. This has really been a bipartisan activity.
Yeah, pots on all their houses, basically.
Well,
the 2 losers in a row when it comes to jobs.
Jonathan, we keep hearing it from Republicans entering into this midterm. They still blame Obamacare for lack of jobs on the lower end of the scale, retail jobs, restaurant jobs.
Well, I would tell you that I think Obamacare has been great for entrepreneurs who can leave large companies and start companies. There's 2 sides to Obamacare. There really are. But the fundamental reality is that for the last 25 years, which I said earlier, we have not done what's necessary to create employment in this country first. We have done all that we possibly can to create free markets and not have a lot of friction on the ability to export jobs overseas.
Peter, let's switch to Ebola because it is having an impact on things like airline stocks and overall planning. There are businesses in our area who have canceled conferences in Dallas because of the Ebola scare. Based on your historical knowledge of how consumers react to different scares, is this one going to have a lasting impact on the economy?
Not unless we have a genuine outbreak in the United States, not a few scattered cases of people coming back from West Africa. By and large, this is a second-order consequence because it's happening in another country, and I think overall it's not going to have a big impact on employment and GDP.
Jonathan, we've got Ebola, we've got unexpected shootings in Canada, we've got lots of different things that are making people nervous. What's your take on it?
Listen, we live in a world right now that's a toxic brew of media, punditry, and politics.
That we like to add to every single week.
And let's take some of it back. The reality right now is that Ebola is not ever going to be a pandemic because of the biological structure.
But forget about that reality. We've been talking about that.
But we don't talk about that.
But when you have businesses actually canceling conferences in Dallas because of
because they're scientifically ignorant. Look, this will.
It's happening.
Remember Air Malaysia? Remember how upset everybody was, and CNN said, "Oh my gosh, the airplane disappeared with the aliens." This will pass. The circus will move
And if they don't
along.
have the conferences in Dallas, they'll have them someplace else. This is not a large impact if you add it all up.
So let's
Right.
talk about regional then. Do you think, based on your way of looking at trends in the economy, if you are Dulles International Airport, for example, do you need to worry that you're going to lose passengers to BWI and to Reagan National as they become the place where those passengers are being sent of the 5 airports? Does that affect consumer choices?
It might affect it marginally, but it's not going to be enough to dramatically change the prospects for Dulles Airport.
Right, because there are airlines that just fly into Dulles. If you need to get from Beijing, you got to go through Dulles. It's just the way it is.
People do all kinds of things because of what they see in the news, but that doesn't mean they have a large, measurable effect on the U.S. economy. You have to remember, it's $17 trillion economy is not only hard to turn, but it's hard to affect.
But Jonathan, as you just said, we're looking at a market that every little thing can set traders off and does.
Oh, sure.
So what right now, as you're looking out on the horizon, you're not worried about Ebola.
I'm not worried about it. Nobody should be worried about it. In Africa, they should worry.
Actually, something does set the market off, and it just did it this week, and that's good profits. Despite
There
the
you
fact
go.
that a couple of old line companies are doing badly because they're not well run.
Yeah.
You know, basically IBM and McDonald's are not very well run companies these days. You know, the stock market still did very, very well because there were really good profits reports.
And the other
last
thing
word.
that Peter didn't touch on that we should is energy. Oil's at $80 a barrel now. The more energy gets cheap, the better it is for our economy.
I will let you have the last word because you do talk about the price of crude and what it matters.
Yeah, it does, because it puts money in consumers' pockets, and that gives a boost to spending. The price of oil is in a sweet spot right now. It hasn't fallen enough to hurt domestic production.
Got to wrap. Green light, red light, or yellow light for the economy?
Green light.
Green light.
Okay, I'll say yellow light. We'll be right back.